Let my colleague start the live stream here and we'll get started. All right, with that, Mr. Chair, it looks like we can go ahead and get started. If it's all right with you to do a brief introduction.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to do the introduction, no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I can confirm that we do have quorum, Mr. Chair. Currently missing from members of the committee are Councillor Bohm and Councillor Holland. Joining us from staff are Peter Hugenboss, Commissioner of Business, Environment and Projects, Lucretia Turner, Director of Recreation and Leisure Services, Amy Gibson, Manager of Recreational Services, John Hayter, Supervisor of Special Events, Tracy Snow, Manager of Rural Economic Development. I'm Elizabeth Fawcett, I'm the committee clerk this evening, and Ian Sullivan is joining us as host. We also have 3 delegations present this evening: Ayla Fenton from Loving Spoonful, Sarah Atwells, Treasurer of Kingston Market Vendors Association, and Megan Nod, Executive Director of Tourism Kingston. And we currently do not have any members of the public at this time watching from the gallery. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item is approval of the agenda with the addendum. And I would like to make we recognize that Megan Nod has a pressing time issue, and we need to reorder the presentation of the delegations. So with the committee's commitment to that, then we can go ahead. If that's all right, no objections. Okay. So do I have a mover of the approval of the agenda with the addendum and that change? Done by Councillor Sanik, seconded by Councillor Neal. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Then we have the approval of the minutes of February 24th, 2022. Do I have a mover for the minutes? Councillor McLaren, Councillor Sanik seconds. Any additions, subtractions? Seeing none, all those in favor? It passes. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? No one's making money off this. Okay, that's probably a good sign. All right, seeing none, the delegations, item 5. And we'll begin with Ms. Knott from Tourism Kingston on the update to Kingston public market initiatives. Ms. Knott, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson, and thank you everybody for allowing me to speak first. I have another engagement I have to get to, but really nice to be able to speak to you again. Obviously, I have spoken quite a few times on behalf of the strategy at Tourism Kingston, our board members and our community members as it relates to the Kingston public market. But I just wanted to speak again this evening to make sure that it was heard that Tourism Kingston as an entity fully supports the recommendations and the report in front of you, which is 22-003 to be specific. So Tourism Kingston and the Downtown Business Association, as you'll recall, back in 2021, did quite a detailed report. I think it was 108 pages or so. It was entitled The Revitalization and Reinventing of the Kingston Public Market. And the reason we went to such great lengths to create that report was really we were hearing from community members about the need to create a more accessible, more multi-dimensional market that serviced really what residents and tourists alike require of such a prominent market in such a prominent place as Springer Market Square. So that took a lot of research. It took a lot of public consultation. I certainly went around to a lot of community partners, not inclusive, but just to list a few. I went to Kingston Economic Development Corporation, the DBI itself, Tourism Kingston, Chamber, Kingston Accommodation Partners, quite a few large speaking engagements, which allowed a lot of consultation to feed up into the revitalization and reinventing document that you've all seen. And really what came out of that parallels what you're seeing tonight in front of you as it relates to the research and the review and the report that's in front of you. The integrated destination strategy obviously is a document that we've talked about quite a few times at council. And that's really because it's a strategy that was supported by council, Kingston Accommodation Partners and Tourism Kingston as it relates to the strategy to move certain items, 20 to be specific, forward to make sure that residents and tourists alike are being better served by the tourism community. So having said that, one of the items certainly in the integrated destination strategy that identified that could use some momentum and certainly some attention was definitely the Kingston public market. A lot of markets, as it relates to what you see in the report in front of you, are designated farmers markets such that it's a more inclusive, purely farmer related, farm to table, localized market that doesn't have barriers to entry. And so I know in the March 23rd, 2021 report that went to council and was approved, the barrier to entry was reduced in that it didn't require a lot of local farmers to have to be as stringent as it once was to come to market on specific days, required the number of days. And it also broke down other barriers. And so certainly I think tonight's report in front of you is sort of the next phase of what we've all been working towards, which just is a market that's more localized, that allows access for farmers in a more realistic way, and also allows more community engagement, which I think is a really important part of what the report highlights tonight. As it relates to how Tourism Kingston would work with all of the community members that would be involved in this, in these changes, should they be approved. Certainly, Tourism Kingston obviously is the marketing agency for the external marketing agency for the city, and we do promote and support all markets within the city of Kingston. But what's really exciting about this is that the potential of making some of these changes would allow us to speak to the audience in a more clear and directive way about how they could become engaged in the public market, with the transition ideally to a farmer's market, so that there is more activations such that Memorial Center Farmers Market is a great example, that there is just something for everyone, it seems, and be able to engage in community events and more than just engage with the stall-like approach that sort of is what it is at the current public market is really what we're striving for, because we think we can put a lot of momentum and support behind the changes that do come. And we as a community feel, I think a tourism community feel that that would be beneficial to everyone around us, so residents and tourists alike. So with that, I'll end it there, just to say that certainly on behalf of the Tourism Kingston Board and myself, certainly we are 100% in support of the additional changes that you see before. And we'd like to thank staff, because we know there was a large amount of public engagement and community engagement and thought that went into the report that's in front of you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? I've got a couple. Ms. Knott, you indicated one of the advantages of farmers market is that the rules were not as stringent. I take it that's a reference to public health and food demonstration? Or were there not?
Yeah, 100%. I think the designation of farmers market just enables us, I think, as a community to enhance what can and can't happen at currently what is the public market. So things like sampling, you're right, Councillor Hutchinson could be involved. Things like tastings, whether that's craft beer or other specific beverages, whether it's alcoholic or non, could be served. Just the ability to set up the market in such a way that the items that are offered per vendor are regulated, but yet encouraged to be more localized or local produce and specialty produce. We could have like a mushroom vendor, for example, and that be locally grown, and that be okay. That the amount of time or seasonality of such a vendor can work, his or her crop season into participating in a certain month or, a few weeks of when that crop is ready to come to market, for example, so that there is changes in the market and welcome changes, so that you never kind of know. There are obviously some standalone market vendors, but traditional that would come per week, obviously, but then there's a specialty based on seasonality. And I think that's really what also excites people to come back, is that there is a seasonality to production and produce, and that the ability to kind of, from a marketing perspective, make sure that the community knows what's on tap at the farmers market, and inclusive to children too. I think that's what the Memorial Center market does so well also, is the engagement of families. So that it's not such a vehicle heavy front of house array of product, and you kind of have to zigzag cross-sectionally through the market. But the flow and the layout of farmers markets generally, and the Memorial Center is a great example, is just something that I think is definitely obtainable, and a goal that I'd like to see come to fruition.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person is, what is that? I believe it's Alia Fenton, and from Loving Spoonful, speak about the same topic, update the Kingston Public Market Initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone.
There she is.
Hi, good to be back. My name's Ayla Fenton, and I'm the Urban Agriculture Manager at Loving Spoonful. I'm also a board member of the Farmers Market Association of Kingston, which is the body that operates the Memorial Center Farmers Market. And in addition to that, I've worked on a number of the local farms in the area over the past 10 years. So tonight I'm here to represent both of the organizations, Loving Spoonful and the Memorial Center Farmers Market, to support the recommendations in this report. I also spoke as a delegation to council last spring when some of these initial market bylaw changes were being recommended. So I'm happy to see that this work is continuing, and that the city is taking this issue of revitalizing the downtown market seriously. So I mentioned this last year, but so as most of you probably know, the Memorial Center Market was started in 2012 by a group of local farmers, most of whom were actually vendors at the Kingston Public Market. And that group left the Kingston Public Market to start the Memorial Center Market because they felt the need to start a producers only market, because the existing bylaws and the management of the public market by the city was disadvantaging them. And they felt that the city and the market were not prioritizing their needs. So it's gratifying, I think, for them to see that the city is now recognizing that their work and their leadership and their self-governance has built the Memorial Center Farmers Market into the vibrant space that it is today, and that the city is seeking to learn from that work to revitalize the Kingston Public Market downtown. I'm also glad to see that this report and these recommendations today understands that the city needs to support all farmers markets, not just the Kingston Public Market. So we are grateful for the recommendation that the city waive the rental fee again for the use of the Memorial Center. Prior to last year, we were one of the only markets that actually paid rent to the city in Ontario, because most cities recognize that farmers markets are an essential service. And so it was very much appreciated last year that the council voted to waive our rental fee, which is around $6,000, and is a significant portion of the operating budget for the market. So of course we support that recommendation again this year. And we would also like to encourage staff and council members to make this change permanent so that we don't have to go through this every year. Last year's report included a recommendation to explore the viability of an indoor year-round market space. And this is something that still needs to be done. The Memorial Center Markets currently uses the unheated barns for the winter market operation, which obviously poses some significant challenges for both vendors and consumers. But I think that the other recommendations in this report about bringing in a third-party operator for the Kingston Public Market and as a result repealing the bylaw opens up some doors for exploring the possibility of an indoor winter market space that could potentially be shared between the two markets and increasing the collaboration between the two markets more broadly. I also think that the recommendation of shifting the oversight of the market from recreation and leisure services to the Rural Economic and Community Development Advisory makes a lot of sense. And I think it reflects the understanding that farmers markets are actually a crucial component of rural agricultural and economic viability, and not just a recreational service for city residents. Many groups have been calling on the city for years to recognize this, and moreover to recognize that farmers markets are actually essential for building local food sovereignty. So we're encouraged to see the city moving in this direction and shifting items like farmers markets into that rural development portfolio. Loving Spoonful supports the third-party operator model that's being proposed here. Specifically, we support it because it's what the farmers are asking for. And the survey results from the vendors and the farmers pretty clearly show that. I would add a caveat that as the request for proposals is being produced and proposals being submitted, that the farmers and vendors should continue to be consulted throughout that process and ensure that they are in support of the award before the award is offered by the city. The farmers have already indicated in those survey results that it's essential that this third-party organization be familiar with farmers markets and with the agricultural industry. So that's something that's going to need to continue to be taken into account. But in general, we do support all of the recommendations that are included here, and we'd like to see that this move forward to council. And I think it would be a very positive shift for the market and help the market develop more clear purpose and more clear leadership structure. And I think I will leave it there unless there are any questions. Thank you.
No, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Sen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Fenton, for all the points that you just raised and said that you agree with and gave us your feedback on. Very much appreciated to hear. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. I was getting emails from some of the organizers of the Memorial Center Farmers Market, and it was about signage. Do you know, like, is any of that still ringing a bell? Is it still a problem? Or I don't know if it got resolved. Like, I think it was more like just a sign like farmers market with an arrow. And yeah, I don't think it was that long ago. I think but I don't think it was last summer, maybe the summer before. So I just wonder, since we have you here and we're talking about the farmers market, if you know if that's still an issue or not.
Yeah, no, I believe that has been resolved. If I'm remembering correctly, there was some issues around, we were trying to put up promotional signage on the day of market, and there was some issues from the city with that respect, but I believe that's all been resolved, and we've been using that signage, and yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Let's see, I've got a couple, okay. Not sure which one's more important. As far as the farmers market designation, is there a percentage of farm food vendors that have to be present? And if so, what is that percentage?
Yeah. So according to Farmers Market Ontario, which is the body that governs these things, to be able to be called a farmers market, you need to have 50%, 51% or more agricultural vendors, and that's like primary producers of agricultural goods. I believe from talking to city staff the other day that the current makeup of the Kingston public market is, over the past several years, has been ranging between 20 and 30% agricultural vendors. So it will take some time to reach that 50%, because I also cautioned city staff when I spoke to them the other day that in order, like there's a management that needs to happen of the market as a whole. You can't just like flood a farmer's market with like a whole bunch of new farmer vendors and then still expect them to all make money and be viable. So it might take a little bit of time to get to that farmer's market designation, but it's certainly possible.
Right. That's a really good point you made. So something that occurred to me while reading the report that, and you heard the presentation from Tourism Kingston. Do you have any I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not quite sure how you're going to frame it. That is, do you have any problem with sharing the space with other food-related activities? I mean, I know I've attended the Memorial Center Market many times. So clearly there's food preparation there. So I'm assuming you keep a close eye on whether you've got 51% farm produce or garden produce there.
Yeah, so you mean like bringing in vendors that are doing prepared food and things like that?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine, and it contributes to a more vibrant and appealing market for customers. One strategy that could be considered here, though, is with the Memorial Center anyways, is that we prioritize prepared food vendors who are actually using local farm products in their prepared foods when assessing applications, and we give priority to those applications. And because then that also provides education about how to use those local products. So there's a lot of synergies there, and I think it's great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I grant you that it sounds very attractive, okay? The question is whether you are still making the 51%.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, that is just something as a whole, as a market board, that we have to constantly evaluate, and we just don't accept new vendors if it would mean that we would go below 50% agricultural vendors. Right.
No, but you can see that tension there in the report, okay? So I think I'm just bringing that up because I'm going to probably bring it up again later. Now, final question. This proposal asks for a market manager. In fact, it asks for a third-party operating body. And I'm kind of wondering, how do you conceive a third-party operating body with a market manager in terms of affordability of fees?
I think that from what I've seen of the current budget of the Kingston public market, the stall fees that are currently provided to the city would more than pay for a sufficient market manager position. So at the Memorial Center market, we have very similar vendor fees, and those fees are sufficient to cover 2 part-time staff people, a promotions person and a general farm manager, market manager. And it's a totally self-sustaining system. Yeah. And actually, if I can go back to your previous question about the prepared foods too, because I think that something important to mention about what the recommendations are actually saying is that if you get the farmers market designation, it means that farmers themselves can also be providing prepared food products from their stalls, which currently, without the farmers market designation, there are public health restrictions that make it more difficult for them to do so. But if it's an actual farmers market, then farmers are allowed to sell prepared food products that are made with their own agricultural products that are made in like their home kitchen or in their like at their farm. They don't need a commercial kitchen. So it would advantage those farmer vendors as well.
Right, and I think I've observed that actually happening at the Memorial Center.
Yeah.
So I think the number for the market, the public market downtown, the $29,000 or something in fees. So we're waiving those this year. That can't continue and make this work. So I don't know. I can see that could be problematic along the line. I'm just raising the issue. We have to have the presentation from staff yet. I believe the
recommendation is just to waive 50% of the fees for vendors that donate to Loving Spoonful. So it's not all of the vendors.
Right. Okay.
Yes, but yes, that might be a concern moving forward, is making sure that it's
okay, good point.
revenue.
Right. Any other questions of the delegation? Councillor Neal.
Thank you, and thank you, Ayla. Just a quick question regarding the 51% rule. Do we have to, let me rephrase that rather than the royal we, do you have to make sure that that is on a continual basis? I know when we were organizing the Memorial Center market, there were vendors that wanted to come on Sundays, but clearly said, you know, they can't afford to lose any more time on the farm by adding a fourth day. So I understand that you've made it somewhat more lenient for vendors. So if they choose to come 2 of the 3 days that the market is open downtown, that's allowable. Is that accurate?
Right. That's I believe that it would be required on a continual basis. Like that a Tuesday market, if a Tuesday market, none of the farmers were showing up, you wouldn't be able to call it a farmer's market on Tuesday. But I think that there would be ways to get around that, that maybe it's called the Kingston Public Market on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's the farmer's market on Saturdays, something like that.
And I know on the one occasion, and unfortunately, the downtown market did this prior to them getting farmers market status. But there has been from the county a wine distributor, and they are recognized as appropriate farmers market vendors. Is that correct?
Yep. As of a few years ago, wine and beer sales have been permitted by the province as farmers markets, and depending on the wine or beer producer, those producers could count as agricultural producers. So we have vendors at the Memorial Center who are there's a cidery, and the McKinnon brothers, because they farm some of their products that go into their beers, they can be considered an agricultural vendor. And if it was a vineyard from Prince Edward County that's producing their own grapes, they would be considered an agricultural vendor as well.
That would be great, and I look forward to you encouraging those brewers and vendors to
it's certainly
been
been good economically for the Memorial Center market to have those vendors there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Now, the next delegation is Sarah Atwell. She's the treasurer of the Kingston Market Vendors, to speak on Kingston Public Market initiatives. Ms. Atwell. Is Ms. Atwell's there? Does the clerk know that? She's there in some sense.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I have asked her to start her video and unmute. If we can just give her a second here to see if. Oh, she's gonna probably restart and come right back. If we could just take a brief pause to see if we can get her
I see.
back
We
in
got
the
technical problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not new. Hard as the clerk's try. The physical.
There we go.
We want sometimes. Hello, how are you? So, Ms. Atwells, you can commence, please. Are you ready, Ms. Atwells? I don't think she hears me.
Just have to unmute yourself, Ms. Atwell.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Hello. It's a long way to get in there. I was invited to this meeting after I had a meeting with the 2 managers in town about the main subject was how to bring more farmers to the public market. As you as you heard about the becoming farmers market from the public market, we need 50 plus 1% of farm produces, which is, I counted it out the other day, was total 9 out of 32 list vendors. And then I was told that there are 58 vendors waiting to be at the market, but most of them are, which is artisan or crafters. So at this is the two topics we discussed with the two managers yesterday was how to bring more young generation farmers. And the number 2 was how can they help them out if we bring them to this market, how to keep them in. And the other subject was using leftover products from the farm products, which is a lot of stuff's going to wasteland before getting to the customer's hand, which is, if we can, I personally grow vegetables and I make products. So as a public by law, I cannot do at home because I work I'm at the Kingston public market. I have to use inspected kitchen by public health unit, which is, that is the costs involved. This is discouraging many people not to doing. So those things I was told to discuss with the member, but today is, I'm just as a listener, what other people thinking outside of the public Kingston public market. I am actually being banding for last 11 years with my products, but I was listening what other side what the people thinking. So that my main reason is I'm here for listening counselors and other people's other organizations. I'm here for the listening. So I'll, two things was improved since last year, which is one was the if you want to keep the market stalled, we are given best 3 months of the year. Then artisan, they have to keep 80% of attendance, and produce we have to have 66% of attendance to keep our stalls. Artisans, they can make it three times a week, but in produces, I mean, I work in the farm, going to the market twice a week for 3 months is very difficult, which is a city law for market attendance for once a week for next, 3 months without losing. Secondly there was 50% of deduction if we donate surplus of the crops, products to the charity. We got the 50% back. That was very encouraging. I hope that's continue, and then more produce can participate for those the loading fees and the loading maintenance mandatory attendance. Those things actually is we can bring more farmers, plus try to bring to more young generation farmers, is helping them out for financially or lower the rate for them so they can stay for a few years. As I started at the farm, first 3 years, I barely made money, but I accumulated experiences and know-how. And after that, I built a clientele and then also increased my sales. And now after 11 years, I am doing really well. Even though some farmers left to other market, I am doing well because there is a demand. And then I noticed that there is something not filling in this market, public market. And then, I mean, I've been asking for a few other people, what was the reason left this market? There is many other. First, sales dropped. Second, they didn't like a managing system. There's so many others, but those are two priority things. Didn't like a managing system by the city, or the sale was dropped. So they took up the market and was so those things. I like to be present as a market vendor. And also this market is targeting for two different clients. One is local people and one is for the tourism tourism people, which is people who comes to Kingston for buy tour bus. They are given only so many minutes. They go to use the washroom, then go around to take a look, and they take a bus and they leave, which is these people don't have time to go to restaurant, order and sit down, wait for their order. They don't have time. So which is what I noticed, that there is a lack of grab and go food. So they buy already prepared food and then pick up some drink, and they can get onto the bus, which is that point it can generate income for some food providers, which is that can bring for more people to local, not only local people, and also those the tourism people. But we are under public health bylaw. We're not allowed, those food vendors not allowed provide anything. We have to bring everything from packaged food from home, even drink. Everything has to be packed. We're not allowed to do it. That point, if we go back to the farmers market, as other delegator suggested, they can provide on the spot. That can attract more people to Market Square.
Excuse me for 1 second. I just asked the clerk, have we reached our time limit here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I do believe that the delegation is at 4 minutes 30, if you wanted to give her a 30-second warning.
Sure, that's what I was looking for. So Ms. Atwells, 30 seconds, please. Continue, please.
Sorry, I can't hear that. I'm sorry that.
You have 30 seconds of your time left to address the issues that you wanted to bring up.
Issue of the bring farmers needed to be changed from farmers, the public market to farmers market. To bring more farmers need some kind of help from the city or organization.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Any? I have one question. Most of what you said it's appeared to me to be covered in the report.
Yes.
The question is that not a lot of vendors were surveyed. So I'm wondering if there are any issues that you know of that are out there from the point of view of the vendors regarding any changes that are being proposed.
The biggest issue is the trust from city and vendors. And not even some vendors, they left this market totally and they don't even looking for coming back. And second, it's very difficult to recruit new vendors, except more crafters and artisans people. Those people are more targeting for their main business is targeting tourists. But to survive as the local provider, we have to bring more farmers or producers to target both local customers and tourists.
Right. Okay. So there's two different focuses to different vendors. Okay. That's valuable. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee? Councillor Neal.
Thank you. And probably another question for Ayla. As the discussion was going on about non-farmer vendors, I'm just a little curious. Is it possible for us to designate an area of Market Square that would be not part of the farmers market designation so that we could, whether it's the back corner or the western side, we could use that as a method of reaching our 51%, couldn't we?
Yeah, I had a call with Lucretia Turner here the other day, and that's actually exactly the strategy that I proposed might be a way to reach that designation faster. It's a little bit of a loophole for sure, but I think that I personally don't see why you couldn't say that like this section of Market Square is the farmers market, and then that section over there is the Kingston public market.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I would have to, we'd have to double check that with, like with Farmers Market Ontario. But I think that as long as it was clearly marked that like this is the farmers market, I wouldn't anticipate that there would be an issue with that.
Great. Thank you very much.
I think experienced the chair as Councillor Neal is that he knew that was out of order. But since I had similar questions reading the report, I let it go by, which shows that corruption reigns everywhere. So the any questions from the committee? Not of that sort. So not seeing any, we'll go on to the next item because I think we're going to find some interesting things coming up in part 6, the briefings. Lucretia Turner, Director of Recreation and Leisure Services, will discuss the Kingston Public Market Initiatives. There she is. Welcome, Lucretia.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. We're pleased to be here this evening with report number 22-003, update to the Kingston Public Market Initiatives in collaboration with rural, economic, and local food strategies. With me tonight from staff, I have Amy Gibson, Manager of Recreation Services, Tracy Snow, Manager of Rural Economic and Community Development, and John Hayter, who's our Supervisor of Special Events and Sports Tourism, who has overseen the market for us the last couple of years, sorry. I'd like to thank these staff members for their hard work over the past months, which has led us to being here this evening with this report. We're here to recommend changes in how the Kingston Public Market operates in order to increase participation in vending by the local farming community. These changes would also allow for the Farmers Market of Ontario designation to be achieved. This information is reflective of all of the great feedback we have heard from vendors and other stakeholders. We want to acknowledge and thank all of those who have taken the time to provide feedback and participate in engagement sessions over the past year to inform staff's recommendations tonight. These recommendations would be implemented for 2023, as well as informing the exciting changes that we have planned for the 2022 market programming. Next slide, please. So a history of the market. So as you may remember, last year, it was actually March of 2021, staff brought forward a committee or a report to the ARC committee and also to council with proposed changes to the farmers market operations. We also identified 5 local markets and we described their operating models. 2 of those 5 markets are actually located on City of Kingston property, one of them being the Kingston Public Market in Springer Market Square, and then the Memorial Center Market, which we've heard lots tonight about both. The public market is governed through a City of Kingston bylaw. It's bylaw number 2021-49. And the Memorial Center Farmers Market is governed by its own set of policies, which is established by a board of directors. So I think it's very important for council to understand the difference between the 2 models and how they run. Next slide, please. So last year's report recommended some changes. As you've heard about tonight, there was the recommendation and these changes were approved by council. So reduction in vendor fees, more support to the Kingston Public Market Vendors Association. We had discussions with them about developing a self-governing model. We wanted to take a look at a different operating model for the 2022 2022 season, and we wanted to discuss with them or pursue longer term changes to the current model. And as Ayla mentioned earlier, looking at options for a year-round market, and also looking at an option for an overarching market association for all markets in Kingston. Next slide, please. So some of the resources that we made available in 2021, we increased marketing support to the market. So we collaborated with our colleagues in communications and customer experience. And the first thing we did was we updated the city's website and used the social media platforms that we have. We also collaborated with Tourism Kingston and the Downtown Business Association, who also shared market promotions on their websites to support the growth in sales for the vendors. As you've heard and also stated in the staff report, we had a fee reduction program. And Councillor Hutchison, I think you had a question about this earlier. So 7 producers actually participated in that program in 2021, which led to us reducing their fees by 50%. So it was approximately $6,400 that we reduced. And in return for donations that were made to local food programs. And I do want to thank Ayla and Loving Spoonful, who coordinated that work for us last summer and getting the food to the local food programs. Number 3 was food programming in general. So that's some of the items that you've heard about tonight, pairings and tastings. Unfortunately, we weren't able to provide any of that last year in 2021 due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So public engagement. As per the direction of the report from March of 2021, we did hire a consultant. And so the consultant, along with city staff, started a public engagement, this round of public engagement anyways, back in October of 2021. What we mean by a stand-up conversation is that actually took place right in Springer Market Square, I believe at the end of a market day. And there was a couple of the members of the Kingston Public Market Vendors Association that were there. So some of the information that came out of that conversation was that there was little interest in pursuing a self-governance model due to the time that is required to coordinate meetings and settle issues amongst the vendors. There was also a concern, and I believe that you've heard about it earlier, about the support from the city and the fear of being pushed out of some of the vendors of being pushed out of the current stalls that they have at the market. There's definitely an interest in attracting new vendors and improving marketing and potential partnerships with tourism. Next slide, please. So the most recent public engagement took place in March of 2022. So we were able, telephone and email surveys were sent out to all 20 seasonal vendors. We did receive feedback from 9, but I do want to be clear that those 9 are in addition to the 2 that we received feedback from in October. So we technically reached 11 out of the 20. We did place follow-up phone calls and emails to people and gave them the opportunity to respond, but we were able to reach 11 out of the 20. So during that session, we asked three questions of the vendors. The first question was, if they had a magic wand, what changes would they make to the market? And what would that ideal market operation look like? The second question that we asked was around the strengths of the market. So before considering any potential changes, what is it that the current market vendors value about the operation currently? What could be preserved and what also could be carried forward with any sort of new initiative? And the last question that we asked was, what kind of things would have to happen for you to consider a different model for market operations? Next slide, please. So out of that basically came 5 common themes. The first was that a market manager or a third-party operator, that there was interest in that. And I believe that that's, that's what you've heard tonight from the delegations that we've had, but it's also what we heard from the vendors. And it's something that is actually, the market manager piece is something that we've been consistently hearing. We heard it back with the report in 2021. So 55% of the respondents suggested the use of a market manager would be extremely helpful. It's about having a focused role on the market, somebody that is there, somebody who has a background in this, in farming, in markets, that can work on different pieces and more of a subject matter expert. The vendors who responded were not opposed to a third-party operator, but they did indicate to staff that it was important that the operator had knowledge in order to perform the role. The second theme that we heard about was more producers of farm products and less resellers. So we've heard about that as well tonight. Has to do with the farmers market designation that Ayla was speaking of. So the 51%, and the 51% of producers are farmers who are selling farm products. The 49% does include other pieces to a farm, or to the market, which really gets to the theme of there's a place for everyone, right? So 49% could be your bakers, could be your crafters, it could be your artisans. It's made up of a wide category of vendors. I believe that you've also heard earlier, and I will just reconfirm, that over the past few years, the percentage of actual producers or farmers at the market has ranged between 20% to 35%. Next slide, please. The third theme that we heard about was the ability to sell prepared foods, similar to the Memorial Center market. So there's a couple of different pieces to this. There's the grab and go function that Sarah spoke of. So as you know, we do have a lot of tour buses that do come throughout the spring, summer, fall. They can't always get into a local restaurant. Sometimes times permit that, other times they don't. But for tour buses, it's that grab and go function. We've also heard, there's people from the community that are downtown as well that maybe just want something quickly to be able to grab something quickly and go. So being able to have that, also being able, as Ayla mentioned, the farmers being able to sell products that they actually make with items that they're producing. And what has stood in the way of that is obviously the farmers market designation. And when you don't have that farmers market designation, then there are some other processes that you do have to go through with public health in order to make some of those things happen. The fourth theme was a vehicle parking on and off site. So this came up in a couple of different areas. It was about parking for customers who are senior, so parking that is closer to the market square. Some of the vendors have identified the fact of needing their vehicles on the square. Others have identified to staff that they don't necessarily need their vehicle that close to them. But we also did hear from our external stakeholders about the removal of vehicles from the square. Next slide, please. And then what you've also heard about tonight is securing the next generation of vendors. So what does the next generation of vendors look like? And it's twofold. It's the next generation of vendors but it's also attracting new vendors to the market as well. So that was the fifth theme that we had heard about. Next slide, please. So consultation with our external partners. We sat down with Tourism Kingston, the Downtown Business Association, Kingston Accommodation partners, and also the chair of the Local Food Policy Council. And some of the things that staff heard, or key themes that we heard out of that discussion, was food security and access to local food, the ability to buy more types of food that is grown in the region, the vibrancy of the downtown and the vehicles on the square, additional programming similar to the Memorial Center Market that in order to take place, we would need the farmers market designation. We talked about growth of the downtown population and active transportation, tying together council priorities, but also advancing the works of the culinary strategy, the rural economic strategy, food security and tourism. The ability to showcase vendors has come up actually in not just this stakeholder session, but also with the vendors as well. So how do we showcase our vendors? How do we showcase our farming community? And how do we promote agritourism opportunities? So there were some great ideas that came out of that. One of them, and we talked about signage earlier, was signage at the different markets, and maybe it could be a high level bio of each of the individual stalls that would tell about the farm and the farmer and what was growing. So that came up in the discussion. And then also the year-round market expansion and the importance of seasonality of markets. The next slide, please. And then there was also consultation with our internal departments as well. So as you know, Tracy Snow, who is here with us this evening, we're fortunate to have her here tonight, and also to have a consultation session with her. She's our manager of rural economic and community development. So she spends a lot of time working with the local farming community. So very fruitful discussion here about the clear alignment between the existing Kingston public market and the current work that is happening to support local farmers through new program development and other initiatives. We also discussed having more local farmers at the market, how that would help to achieve the farmers designation that we've talked about. And then also complementary to the market are the food security initiatives that Tracy and her team are working on, and how that can further advance council's strategic priorities regarding leveraging food and promoting food security solutions in partnership with different community partners. Next slide, please. And then there's the recommendations that are in the report. So based on the feedback that we received, staff are recommending an RFP to find a new operator model, similar to the model of the Kingston Memorial Center Farmers Market. This would be for implementation in 2023. The RFP would include a number of requirements for the operator, including assigning a resource such as a market manager to support the vendors, bringing in more local producers of farm products to the market in order to achieve that designation, and continuing to introduce new features at the market, including selling the prepared food, the expansion of chef demonstrations, and also food sampling. We're recommending also that staff would report back to council Q3 of 2022, seeking direction on the award of the RFP and the repealing of the current market bylaw. And then the fourth recommendation is for 2022, staff are recommending 50% reduction at the Kingston public market and continuing to waive fees for independent not-for-profit markets that operate on city property, such as the Memorial Center Farmers Market. Next slide, please. And then 2022 programming. So we've talked about 2023 and what that's going to look like, but staff have been working on what would happen in 2022. We made some great changes, as you know, in 2021, and we really want to continue to build on those changes. So for 2022, that would be, as far as the food programming is concerned, really being able to do what we weren't able to do in 2021. So the wine, beer, and spirits, as you've heard from Ayla, this can be a value added. These are value added products, especially if they're produced locally. They're incredibly popular with customers. And the intent is to offer these products with food pairings. So being able to pair food that is grown by our local farmers, but also food that is cooked by our local farmers, but also in conjunction with the local restaurants too. So we see that this at other markets throughout Ontario, where they'll pair up a local farmer with a local restaurant, and we've seen how it's beneficial. So staff are taking a look at that. We're also looking at post-pandemic chef demos, which will be reintroduced. So every Saturday morning in July and August, a local chef will prepare a dish with locally sourced ingredients. Again, about the samplings, offering food, beer, and wine, and creating the opportunities to showcase those products that really connect our consumers to the taste and offer, just really offer that experience that you can get at other markets like the Kingston Memorial Center Market. And then we're working with the DBIA and Tourism Kingston on the Grab and Go food initiative that I spoke about a few moments ago. So how do we promote our local restaurants, but also help to support the farm to table initiatives that we speak about in the Kingston Culinary Strategy? Next slide, please. And we're at the end of the presentation, so thank you.
Has any questions from the committee? Okay, Councilor Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thanks for that presentation, Mr. Wright. Thank you so much. Right. So, so just about the grab and go and prepared foods. So first, I just want to tell everybody who's on here that like I work during the day at the OHIP building, which has like 700 people. Right now we're just there 1 day per week, but eventually we're going to be 3 days per week. So that's like a big audience. And because of COVID, we used to have a cafeteria. We don't have an operator at all for the cafeteria. So there is a target market, right, for the farmers market on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because all of us are really hungry. And, you know, like we always used to go to the cafeteria and that's where we would grab lunch. And now all those people that are there on their, 3 days per week come May, will be, heading out downtown looking for something that, like we would only on ever special occasions go to a restaurant. So a grab and go idea at the farmers market would be perfect. Tuesdays, Thursdays, get your sandwich, get whatever that you can then bring back to your desk, like huge market. And although like city council, like we're only 13 people, but when I go from work to city hall, I'm starving, right? And so that's another thing, we could grab something at lunch that we can then go and bring at dinner. Like I'm really excited to hear about the grab and go. So it looks like if we could get to like the farmers market designation of having that 51%, it looks like the earliest we could do that would be maybe next year in 2023. And that's when we, other than the food programming, like grab and go in conjunction with the restaurant, at Market Square. But I think that doesn't that involve sitting down? How fast would that be, like, to be able to grab and go this summer? And then I definitely know, like, grab and go, if it's prepared food, would that be in 2023, or would we actually be looking at 2024 for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and that's a great question, Councillor Osanek. So we're actually looking at 2022. We've been in consultation or conversations with the Downtown Business Association for a couple of months now on that option, just because we do recognize the fact that it is needed, right, for many different reasons. So tour buses, concession problems with workplaces. And so it's something that we believe that we can have in place for 2022. We're working diligently on that with the DBIA.
Okay, thanks for that. So I didn't know that. The grab and go that you showed under the food programming for 2022, it would be that fast then, eh? It would be that fast. Okay, that's great. I'll look forward to that this summer. And if there's a poster, right, like, I could definitely stick up some posters at McDonald Cartier building so that everyone who's in work those 3 days per week will know about Market Square. I'll do that promoting for you.
Any other, I'm not sure that was a question or an ad, but anyway, any other questions of the committee? I've got a couple, and I'll come back since I don't see a flurry of hands. In fact, there's Councillor McLaren at all. So my questions are, as a contextually, there was a question someplace or a statement someplace, I don't know, it was an email. Somebody said, well, we did all this work in 2012 and not much happened. And the reason for that is what you can discern in the report in nice language is the natural tensions between external stakeholders and the farm vendors and the surrounding businesses and so on. We just couldn't find a solution that would actually help that much with this issue. And so my first question is, it's unclear. Okay, first question is the role of the rural economic management / oversight. It's unclear what management means in that case. I mean, it seems like a natural fit, and it fits in with the, seed to table concept and all that sort of thing, which is good. But what actually is involved?
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague Tracy Snow has her hand up, so I'm going to defer to Tracy.
Ms. Snow? We have a problem here. She can't find her video, maybe. Here we go.
Oh, thank you. I had to get permission. Sorry about that. Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Snow. Brand new position that was started at the beginning of December. Not to say that what Kingston was doing before was wrong. It's just the time that they had, the energy that everybody was putting towards other projects. It was never really a person that was designated specifically for rural Kingston, agricultural Kingston, farmers in Kingston, food in Kingston. Everybody was trying to do what they could. They actually, as part of the rural economic development strategy that was created last year, that's where my role came in. So I'm a full-time person with a team that, one of the many pillars of responsibilities is to include rural revitalization, rural farming support, farm growth, agricultural support, working with food security. So everything in regard to food and agriculture, farming, supporting the growth of farmers, supporting that initiative of food and food security and food in Kingston. In the past 5 months, I've worked really closely with a lot of our partners, Tourism Kingston, Rec and Leisure Department, many of our other departments, to look at what does that look like? What does that mean? Where are the gaps and the opportunities? We've actually held meetings with farmers and talked about gaps and opportunities and where they see problems. My past, just a little bit, councillors, I was the Senior Economic Development Officer for the County of Lennox and Addington for almost 12 years. And one of the sectors, I was in multiple sector in terms of support. One of the sectors that I was strongly working with was the agricultural sector and farms. So I'm bringing that experience to this. I've had great conversations with, like I said earlier, with our partners. My role and our department's role is to support anything food related coming from our farmers in rural Kingston, coming from our food and our local food in the Kingston area, and supporting all of our departments, including Rec and Leisure, in initiatives that include food and anything food related and food security related. That's my role. I'm here to support all the departments and work with everybody to make that happen. There's a lot of great ideas that Rec and Leisure have brought to the table tonight with regards to food and events and that collaboration of local food and farm to table and farm to community. And I'm doing a lot of work with regards to that. We are working closely with our regional partners. So Rural Kingston is actually going to be actively involved in the Open Farms event this fall. They've been engaged and invited to be in the Open Farms event in the past 3 years. We just haven't had a person on the ground working with our farmers to support that. So that is definitely something that I've already started doing and working with our farmers. As part of that, we're looking at holding an event to wrap up that great event in the fall and have this Open Farms Harvest event, working with Tourism Kingston on that. Part of the big piece as well with regards to food and the farmers in our community is training. So we're looking at doing a number of training pieces, looking at putting together what commercial kitchens look like in the region to support our farmers in creating food, something that they may have never considered before and don't even know what that looks like and what that means. So helping farmers and teach farmers on what that collaboration of commercial kitchens in our region and their farms can do to help, create more income for their business, create more business for them, and more awareness of what we have in terms of local food. We've been approved.
That's good, Ms. Snow. I appreciate the general thing. We haven't met you before.
No.
It's important, but more specifically to this topic.
Yes.
What do you understand will be your managerial responsibilities?
So there's a suggestion that it makes sense to have this RFQ and the role of the outside company work with my department to support rural food. It's a suggestion that we're working with at this point. And then in collaboration with that, we would also then put towards events and other pieces that would build all of that together. I think Peter has his hand up. Peter, did you want to engage?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And you, a tough act to follow. You hit the nail on the head on a lot of things here. And Councillor Hutchison, I just wanted to add that we, depending on the responses and the operator model that would come through an RFP process, if the committee and council were to support our recommendations tonight, is something that we see the value. Tracy has explained it, that we now have these rural resources. And of course, if we're looking at a farmer's designation, that involves the rural community very significantly, but also a balance with the other vendors and all the great success that we've already had at the market. So it could be a collaboration. It could be, we're not going anywhere from a Rec and Leisure department perspective. And there's also event planning and work with Tourism Kingston. So it'd be a great collaboration, but having a voice and a resource as a rural sector to oversee or to help the operator implement those things to get the farmer's designation, I think is a natural fit, and we should leverage that resource. And I apologize, I did break a tooth yesterday, so I don't sound that great. So sorry, just so you know. Yeah, it's okay. It's no pain. I just can't pronounce all the words I'd like to the way they should be. Councillor Hutchison, thanks.
I think I'm not. First of all, I've always supported a rural economic officer, and supported the Councillor Joyce McLeod came when she first came up with that idea. But the first person that did that job didn't do much for rural economic development. Okay, so it fell by the wayside. So I'm very supportive of existence of your position and you in that position, okay?
Thank you.
Question is much more specific to the public market operation. In particular, what powers will the department, rural economic management have? For instance, if there's a dispute, like I know you're going to devolve some of this to a market manager. So are they reporting to you? Like where are the tentacles of power going here?
I think Peter's going to answer this question.
Anyway, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Tracy. So, sorry, Mr. Chair, Councillor Hutchison. Yes, the good question. That's what we want to see out of the responses from the RFP. We know we have a great model at the Memorial Center. I'm not trying to compare. There's different models in different markets, but where we have that is a rental of the space at the center, and they are self-governed and have a volunteer board, and they take great measures to respond to their market, their customers, but as well as keeping their farmers market designation. The Kingston Public Market downtown would be a little more sophisticated because of the natural tie-ins with tourism and things that Councillor Sanik was saying through the week. Of course, you know, it does get more sophisticated, but as an operator model, it's something that we can put in the RFP where we do want to see a farmer's designation. So we as staff will make sure that the operator does do that. It might not be right away. Ayla had some very good points, maybe it's phased in, but it's something that we as a city can work with the operator directly to that, and the operator can then work with its membership, which are the vendors, instead of the city trying to manage all the vendors all at the same time and trying to make those changes, which is very difficult. In the event planning and the special grab to go offerings, all that sort of thing. So staff have that ability because the agreement is signed between the operator and the city. So annually, the rules or the expectations can be laid out in that agreement. It is city property. They're doing that. They are paying a rent, if you will, but are responsible to deliver. And just like any RFP city issue, there are certain deliverables that we need you to perform. This is one that is a little more, I hate to say a little more unique because everything's unique, but you know, this isn't an RFP to hire someone to design a community center. This is to run a market. So it's different, but as Ayla and others said, we would reach out to people who have that knowledge. Tracy has connections in the rural area, as well as the current vendors themselves, and the Loving Spoonful to get input into creating that RFP. And then all that would come back to council before it's awarded for consideration.
So it's sort of like a service level agreement, roughly, right?
Yeah. That's a good way.
You're going to do something for us and you're going to do it in this structure. Okay, you can see why I want to know that, because this is hardly the first time that myself and Councillor Neal and Councillor Sanik have seen this, and we've seen it fall apart before too. So, and there are natural tensions between different stakeholders, and you know, I'm not criticizing that, it's just a fact of life. People are coming at things differently. And we have to somehow, as a city, try to accommodate as much as we can. With that, that's why I'm interested, and hopefully that'll be spelled out who will be responsible for what in any report that comes forward. And then it'll be, the clearer that is, in my experience, the better things are going forward. So because the person who represents this district, and that's me, is going to hear about it. Okay. So the other thing is, in these plans, we heard from Tourism Kingston and that ambit of stakeholders, and the farmers, the Memorial Center and all, farmers market and all that, that's all good. Not sure what the future of the resellers will be. So if somebody could clear up, I didn't really get that out of the report.
For you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take that question. So thank you for that. I think we touched on it briefly earlier. So with the 51 and 49%, you know, the designation that we're working towards, there's room for everyone, right? So so as much, and Ayla mentioned it too. So as much as it is great to have producers, resellers also bring something to the market as well. So how those conversations will take place in the begin, you know, continue to take place as to the overall layout of the market, but there's room for everyone. There's room for the producers, there's room for the resellers. You have the artisans and the crafters and the bakers and all of that eventually fit into that 49%. So that's what you know, it's one format of a successful market.
Okay, fair enough. Regarding, do you have any insight into the vehicle parking problem? Because I'm not sure how that's going to work. I mean, with certain vendors. Is there anything else additional to the report?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a couple of things. So as stated in the report, there's concern about older customers that are coming to the market and potentially having to walk a fair distance. So what the report states is that staff will continue to work with our colleagues in transportation and transit to see if there's some additional options there to alleviate some of those concerns. I think the other set of concerns that we've heard about is there's two mindsets. There's the vendors that require their vehicles on the square because they want to be in close proximity to their product. And then there's other vendors who have brought up the fact of the removal of vehicles from the square just for safety concerns, or also for the expansion of programming as well, right? So similar to the Memorial Center market, where I believe the vehicles are all over in the parking lot, then what that does is that frees up space to add additional vendors. We're also talking about adding additional programming. So one of the comments that was made tonight by one of the delegations, and we also heard this through the stakeholder engagement, is the fact that one of the many things that people like about the Memorial Center market is that, you know, I believe there's been times you could go there, you could take a yoga class, or there's activities for kids to do. So we're taking a look at all of that as staff and the expansion of the footprint of the market, but also being able to maximize the most out of the space that we have down there as well.
Right. I guess my main concern, not my only concern, but my concern was the sellers. They have to be able to get there and be there. As you said, that's a consideration, but there's no sellers, there's no market, right? So all those other considerations are good, but the base bottom is you have to be able to do something. So that brings me to my next question. Have you considered closing additional streets like King Street, Market Street? And I would point out maybe Ontario, where you talked about the parking lot, which I take to be the parking lot across Brock Street, but I'm not certain. So all that, and I would like finish by pointing out that Clarence Street didn't work out, okay? I went there, but apparently the sellers didn't like it much. So with all that little mixture of stuff, have you got any comment on it?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. So really good questions. And yeah, you have been able to address, there are a lot of competing interests and needs to problem solve. And I think, so a couple of things. One, on street closures, there was a report recently to council that we are looking at a closing of streets downtown in and around First Capital Place around City Hall. So that can be considered as part of its impacts or improvements or enhancements to the market. Having an operator that has the focus on bringing more farmers to the market, to addressing all the vendor concerns is something that through Tracy's team and the Christus teams can work with an operator to problem solve. Some of the interesting comments have already been made. I think Councillor Neal suggested, can you split the site, and maybe there's a split where it enables a designation, but also frees up more space where you localize where the big resellers and producers need their vehicles. That could be one area, and the other area could free up, but you might actually be able to create more space for everybody through that as well. So those are the interesting problem solving that can happen in a new model with new ideas. So all good points, but I'm not going to lie to you and say we have a perfect solution tonight. And I know you're not expecting that, because these are valid concerns and have different aspects to them from different parties.
Okay, good. I'm glad you mentioned Councillor Neal's, because we had a meeting in Mindsville along with Ms. Turner about the divided space, if it's possible. So that's it. That's all my questions. I just want them to be considered, and hopefully we can indeed accommodate everybody, because there's a whole slew of quite good ideas out there. So any other questions from the committee? Saying none, we'll move on to 7A, which is the business, which is indeed what we've been considering. The update to the Kingston Public Market initiatives in collaboration with the rural economic and local food strategies. Now, I open it to I think it would be the, in committee, it's the committee first, but I don't believe we've got, well, there's participants now. So I guess we could do that first. We've already asked a ton of questions. Is there anybody on the committee have additional questions? No? Okay, so Madam Clerk, we have 15 participants. Are any of those participants in the public realm, and do they have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we don't have anyone currently in the gallery. However, I do see that Ms. Fenton and Ms. Atwells is still with us. If they had any questions or any further comments they would like to make to the business item, they could definitely do so now if they wanted to raise their hands. So we can just give them a moment to see if they had anything further to add. But otherwise, we can move forward.
Okay. Okay. I think that was a moment. We didn't have it, just in case you're interested. So now I have to read, you're going to bear with me here. We have to read the, back to the committee, I have to get this on get the motion on the floor. You can correct me, Madam Clerk, if I go wrong here. So the recommendation, as in the report, is, and I'll read it, that Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee recommend to Council the following: that Council directs staff to issue a request for proposal to seek existing or new associations to operate the Kingston Public Market in Springer Market Square in a similar fashion to existing designated farmers markets operating in Kingston. That Council directs staff to report back in Q3 2022, seeking direction from Council to award the RFP and repeal a bylaw respecting Kingston Public Market. And the Council endorsed the continuation of the option for a 50% reduction in fees in 2022 for producers at the Kingston Public Market. That Council endorsed waiving 2022 fees for the Kingston Memorial Center Farmers Market, as well as any other existing nonprofit farmers market should it be operating on city-owned property in 2022. And that's it. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor McLaren moves, Councilor Neal seconds. Does the committee have any comments at this point? I don't see any. I think we're very satisfying delegations and briefing. And without comment, this is your last chance. Okay, I'm going to call a question. I'm going to ask for those. And oh, I need a mover and seconder. Oh yeah, I got that. Okay, so having that, all those in favor of the motion, vote, please. Thank you. So that passes unanimously. I'm sure much relief of staff. So now we are on to 7B, which is on page 3 of 3 of the thing. And there's one motion there, and I will read it out. The Arts Advisory Committee reports and recommends as follows. 1, local music working group appointments. That Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee recommend to council that Megan Below, I don't know if that's right, Ricky Brandt, Dean Burry, Jay Clifton, Ann Clifford, Councillor Ostroff, and Gary Raspberry be appointed to the local music working group. So, do we have any discussion of that? Anybody? Okay, I just want to comment. I didn't know that Councillor Ostroff was a rocker, but there you go. So surprises all around. So, not seeing any comment. We don't have any public present. So, all the mover and a shaker for that. See it, Councillor Osanic moves it, Councillor McLaren seconds it. All those in favor of the motion? Thank you very much. That carries unanimously as well. And now we go on to motions. I believe there are none. Notices of motion. Just realized this is the problem for chairs. We have to write out the agenda. The because you can't see any hands coming up. Other business, I don't see any. Correspondence, there's none. Date of the next meeting is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022 at 6 p.m. I'll see you there. Now, adjournment. Who's going to move adjournment? Councillor McLaren, Councillor Neal. All those in favor of adjournment. There we go. Unanimous. So that was very good. I thought that was a very informative meeting. Thanks for being here. Thank you to staff and delegates and so on. Bye.